Hello.
Hi there.
In the previous discussion we had, we did make a side point of the fact that when Moses goes into Egypt, the people are already organized. There's an existing organized way about them in elders. So we're going to go to Exodus and just illustrate this by the text in Exodus.
Yeah, there's about 10 references altogether. Here's the first ones, interestingly enough, in the chapter that we probably think of first if we're Jehovah's Witnesses when we think of Exodus, which is the revelation of the divine name chapter. Chapter 3.
Okay. We're going to read verses 16 and 18. You go, and you must gather the older men of Israel, and you must say to them, Jehovah, the God of your forefathers, has appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will without fail give attention to you and to what is being done to you in Egypt. And they will certainly listen to your voice, and you must come, and you and the older men of Israel, to the king of Egypt. And you men must say to him, Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, has come in touch with us. And now we want to go, please, a journey of 3 days into the wilderness. And we want to sacrifice to Jehovah our God.
So when Aaron and Moses are sent in to Pharaoh to display the power of this God Yahweh for the first time to Pharaoh and his court, they go in the company of the elders.
Right, the older men.
And this group are already there. And that's what we forget, that this is now what went down to Egypt as one family of some 70 or 75 people has now become 2 million people.
Yeah.
600,000 men.
But it grew as families and extended families.
So just in case you missed that segment, a couple of segments back we talked about 6 degrees of separation. So a family becomes an extended family, becomes a clan, becomes tribes, and then finally becomes a nation, which it is at this stage. A side point before we leave this text is the divine name has just been revealed in the 2 previous verses, 14 and 15. And there you have the divine name in 2 forms. One is I am, and the other one is Yahweh. So even in its first revelation, the special revelation that we think of as being unique somehow to the Exodus account, the name exists in 2 Hebrew forms.
Okay.
First person and third person. Side point.
Okay. So now we're going to read chapter 4, verse 29. After that, Moses and Aaron went and gathered all the older men of the sons of Israel. So that's the family connection, the sons of Israel, right?
Yeah.
They're all one family. Then we're doing 12, 21.
Which is the Passover account. So in elaborating the instructions about this new institution of the Passover, we're told this.
Promptly Moses called all the older men of Israel and said to them, Draw out and take for yourselves small cattle, according to your families, and slaughter the Passover victim. Okay.
So the delegation of authority, again, Moses is using the original structures of the older men to pass this new information of God's instructions on the Passover
the family
to the
head.
people.
Okay, chapter 17. We're reading verses 5 and 6. Then Jehovah said to Moses, Pass in front of the people and take with you some of the older men of Israel, and your rod with which you struck the Nile River. Take it in your hand, and you must walk on. Look, I am standing before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you must strike on the rock, and water must come out of it, and the people must drink it. Subsequently, Moses did so, under the eyes of the older men of Israel.
No, this is a bit different because it doesn't say the elders are doing anything. They're not accompanying as an official delegation to Pharaoh. They're not passing on information or instructions to the people.
but they're witnesses to an event. And later on, we know that they instruct their families, so being eyewitnesses, they can tell them what they saw.
Yeah, so this seems to be to justify Moses and Aaron's position. And that's part of what the other arrangements were for, too, to establish the new authority of Aaron and Moses before the existing tribes. Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 18, verse 12. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God. And Aaron and all the older men of Israel came to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before the true God.
This is also a bit of a side glance into a relationship that doesn't look very theocratic when you think about it. He's somehow making an equivalence, and sitting at table meant not only making peace with someone, but agreeing with them in some sense, fellowshipping with them. And this is someone outside of Israel, his father-in-law, a Midianite chieftain.
Right.
We'll go back to that in the next segment.
Now we're going to read 19, verses 5 to 7. And now if you will strictly obey my voice and will indeed keep my covenant, then you will certainly become my special property out of all other peoples, because the whole earth belongs to me. And you yourselves will become to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you are to say to the sons of Israel. So Moses came and called the older men of the people and set before them all these words that Jehovah had commanded him.
No, you have this picture, maybe derived from the movie The Ten Commandments, of Moses coming down with the voice of Charlton Heston and pronouncing to all of the assembled people God's commandments, etc. But here you see how it probably worked most of the time. Namely that God gives Moses instructions, and Aaron sometimes, and says, this is your national vocation. In this spot, you will become to me a special possession, kingdom of priests and a holy nation. By the way, some more on that in the description of one of the last videos. That's their national destiny, their calling now, vocation. But it's passed on to the people through the mediation of the elders.
Man. Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, they don't have microphones, so it would be very difficult for the person in the last row to hear anything.
Even Charlton Heston.
Even Charlton Heston. Okay, so now we're reading chapter 24.
24.
Verse 1. And to Moses he said, go up to Jehovah, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the older men of Israel, and you must bow down from a distance. We'll also read 9 to 14. And Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the older men of Israel proceeded to go up. And they got to see the God of Israel. Under his feet there was what seemed like a work of sapphire flagstones, and like the very heavens for purity. And he did not put out his hand against the distinguished men of the sons of Israel, but they got a vision of the true God, and ate and drank. Jehovah now said to Moses, come up to me in the mountain, and stay there, as I want to give you the stone tablets and the law, and the commandments that I must write in order to teach them. So Moses and Joshua, his minister, got up, and Moses went up into the mountain of the true God. But to the older men he had said, you wait for us in this place until we return to you. And look, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a case at law, let him approach them.
Again, the principle of delegation. But now 70 of the elders, and we have to assume originally there must have been a lot more than 70, representing 2 million people.
Right.
70 of them are invited to a special fellowship with God himself, to see the God of Israel.
Yeah. I don't remember ever reading that, Sister Jehoshaphat. This would have really freaked me out. Yeah, probably.
So they get to see the God of Israel. So I think at this point you may know the new element here, besides someone seeing God and it being by invitation only, is the number 70. And that number 70 has come down to not only the New Testament, but down to modern times in Judaism. The way they organize the number 70 has a great spiritual and governmental significance to them, derived from this. So it's not the last time we'll meet this group or a group of 70 in the Torah. But before that, I think we should go back in the next segment to chapter 18, where the theocratic element is added to the organization, or better stated, the organic nature of the existing government now becomes theocratic because of the instructions that not only Moses gives, but his father-in-law, who leads apparently the discussion of the movement towards elaborating upon the existing governmental structure of Israel. In the next segment.
Okay.